So we are now being recorded. And what we'll do is Jane will speak for a few minutes, and then we will take questions. So go ahead, and if you have questions for Jane, just go ahead and put them in the chat. So you just click on the button chat and put your question in there. And then I will call on you. And what I will do is I will unmute you if I can. Some of you just have phone numbers here, have called in, but some of you have names. So if I can see your name and I can kind of say, now it's Carrie, and I'll unmute you and you'll come on and actually say your question. So yeah, I'd like to introduce Jane Stevens, our founder and publisher.
Hi, everybody. It's so great to see so many people on here. I was thinking, like maybe 5 or 12 or something, but this is great. It shows that we are all in this together, and we're thinking about all this, and we're worried about it. And I think that coming together like this certainly helps us relax. Relax a little bit. I wanted to just read something to you that Danielle Prince, one of our other team members, found on Twitter. And it's from Dr. Aisha Ahmad at University of Toronto in Canada. And she tweeted this out. She said, "I've lived through many disasters. Here's my advice on productivity. First, play the long game. Your peers who are trying to work as normal right now are going to burn out fast. They're doomed. Make a plan with a longer vision." That's the first thing. Second, and as an aside, I don't know if you all have felt as rattled as I have this week, but there was no such thing as productivity in my week. Second, your top priority is to stabilize and control your immediate home environment, especially as so many of us are home now. Ensure your pantry has sensible supplies. You don't need a garage full of toilet paper. That was my aside. Clean your house. Make a coordinated family plan. Feeling secure about your own emergency preparedness will free up mental space. Third, any work that can be simplified, minimized, and flushed, flush it. Don't design a fancy new online course. It will suck and you will burn out. Choose the simplest solution for you and your students with minimum administration. Focus on getting students, if you have students, feeling empowered and engaged, or coworkers, or people who work for you. Fourth, give yourself a proper mental adjustment window, and this week has certainly been that. The first few days in a disaster zone are always a write-off, but if you give yourself that essential window, your body and mind will adjust to the new normal. Without that mental shift, you'll fall on your face. And I certainly felt that this week. I don't know if other folks did too. It's unreasonable to demand your body and brain do the same things under higher stress conditions. Some people can write in a war zone. I cannot. I wait until I get back. But I can do other really useful things under high stress conditions. Support your continuing mental shift. And finally, we can check on our neighbors, reach out to isolated people, and volunteer or donate as we can, because at the end of the day, our papers can wait. And she's an academic, and that's why she posted that. But another way of us saying this for our community is, at the end of the day, our work can wait. We have to take care of ourselves first and then move ahead from there. So why are we doing this today? The big picture is, as all of us are in it, is how to educate and guide ourselves on using this new knowledge of ACEs during this time, especially during this time of this pandemic, and to continue to educate people about ACEs science, because we need it more now than ever, as we all know. Also, how we can make sure that we aren't flipping our lids, and help others to re-regulate when they flip theirs, and understand that that everybody's in this same place of being rattled and moving between amygdala brain and prefrontal cortex, sometimes several times a second. So I think that's good to keep in mind. So what we wanted to do was talk about with you this idea that we had for short webinars or discussions 3-4 times a week. We're interested in what you think we should do for topics, guest speakers, panelists, have times for no topics. I know that at Trauma Informed Oregon they're doing office hours, and maybe we just do what we're doing with our staff, which is just sit together for 15 minutes. But I want to hear what you all want, because we're here to help you get through this, and we are thrilled to have you all as part of ACEs Connection. So if you have a question or a comment.
So we have gotten some comments, and Jane, I don't know if you are wanting to like respond to the comment or say, just say something to the effect of, yeah, I think maybe we could get someone to do a webinar on that. So kind of whatever you feel like, how you feel like fielding these. But I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to unmute Lucy. Let's see. Lucy, if you would not mind reading your question. Oh, let's see. No, it won't let me when I click unmute. It's just, oh, there you go. Sorry, this is a trial run for us, y'all. No, it doesn't let me do it.
Patience.
Yeah, it doesn't let me do it. So I'm just going to read. Thank you so much, for everyone's patience. Interested in strategies for supporting families during social distancing.
We have on ACEs Connection the Parenting with ACEs community, and we've already put a lot of information on there. So I would suggest that you go there to find some things. But obviously, what I've heard so far that is working best is start a schedule and adhere to it every day. If kids are used to waking up at 7 in the morning, get them up at 7 in the morning. That kind of schedule helps. And then I think you can do creative things for social distancing in your neighborhood or in your building. One of the things I know that in our neighborhood we're doing is we have a game that's going around the neighborhood that every day the houses that want to participate put a picture in the window of that day's theme. So it might be clowns, it might be a joke, it might be whatever, and the kids go around and find them. And so that's a way to keep and then share that on the neighborhood site. So that's a way of having a game and yet having some cohesion. So there are many more of these suggestions. What would be great is if you all who are participating have suggestions, just to put them in the chat. We're going to be taking everything that's in the chat and making sure that we address everything that people raise, and then address it later in a blog post, to which we can keep adding more information. So anything, I know that Kia had, can that info be forwarded to us? We'll post it on ACEs Connection and also put it in the Daily Digest and the Weekly Roundup, so it's there.
Yeah, I want to invite everyone. I just posted the link to Parenting with ACEs, and Laura did the one in the education group. I'll post another group as well. So I want to invite all of you, if you're not a part of our communities, you can go to our website, acesconnection.com, and click the button that says communities, and many of you are maybe already in our communities, but this is a place where you can engage with each other and discuss things and see ideas that we're posting. So I wanted to unmute a fellow staff member, Elizabeth, to read this quote she posted.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Someone said when they shared this that they wouldn't agree with Milton Friedman on anything, but did agree with him on this. And it reads, only a crisis, actual or perceived, produces real change. And when that crisis occurs, the actions that are taken depend on the ideas that are lying around. That, I believe, is our basic function: to develop alternatives to existing policies, to keep them alive and available until politically impossible becomes politically inevitable. And if I could, since I have the floor, I just talked to Jen O'Connor in New York. She works for Prevent Child Abuse New York. And she had lined up a bunch of phone calls with legislators. They're working on creating a trauma-informed New York legislature. And she thought everybody would want to cancel the meetings. And she found that that in fact, people were eager to talk. And they set up, instead of having face-to-face meetings, they set up telephone calls. And then she also recommended the movie Resilience to people and sent that link around, thinking that people might have a little bit of extra time to watch a movie that is less than an hour and provides such great foundational information. So that was really surprising to me. She really thought people would say, well, why are you bothering me now with something sort of basically educational? And they were really, really eager to address how this pandemic is affecting children and families. So thank you.
Thanks, Elizabeth.
Thanks so much.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. That this education needs to keep going on. And just a quick note, in the 1918 Grape Flu Epidemic, that was actually where a lot of our public health processes and procedures and practices were developed, because that was a completely brand new thing to this country. And there were cities that dealt with it really well, just trying to make it up as they went along, and other cities who ignored it. And the story of that is just remarkable, because the cities and towns that took action, as we're seeing now, came out of that flu epidemic pretty unscathed. So that's just so I think that with this, our public health infrastructure was kind of ignored for the last, I would say, 20 years, or at least it's been decreasing compared to what it had been. And I think this is a lesson that we need to keep this stuff in place. I'm going to go to the next question from Josh.
And so I just want to say, we're getting so many great comments and questions, and we would like to hear from all of you. And just as Jane said at the beginning, we won't be able to get to all of your questions and comments, and that's okay. We're soliciting more comments than we can address here now, but we will be addressing them in a blog that we will put up. So and we're looking for your feedback in terms of things that you may want us to plan for next week's live webinar content. So please do comment, and know that even if we don't get to you, that we are reading your comments and taking them into account. So thank you very much. We had someone ask about, Josh asked about resources for substance misuse prevention, and how this might be affecting that vulnerable population. And then we had someone say they're wondering about first responders and their trauma. Are there systems in place to help them? Also, I am worried about the workforce and families with undue amounts of stress, the best ways to support the community. Do you want to address either of those, Jane?
Yeah, I'll address both, and then also Deb Burke's comment about changing the language.
Great.
So I think that there's a lot that can be done for people right now who are dealing with substance abuse, and I think so. We did a story a while ago about a family physician in Tennessee who integrated ACEs science into his work, and essentially by combining that with he had medical assistance for the people who were experiencing substance abuse, and then he did group therapy. He got it so that all of his patients were able to hold down jobs, which is pretty remarkable. And they did some pretty good research on that. So I would say that that guy's name is Dr. Dan Sumrock, and we'll put that link into the chat. And what I can do is I can contact him and see what he thinks physicians and therapists and people can do during this time for folks to help them get through this. There's no reason you couldn't do group therapy via Zoom call. I think that there's still the ability to get medical assistance that's needed, and then also integrate this knowledge about ACEs science into that conversation. So we'll get that. First responders, there's a guy named Vic Comfer who put together a really nice documentary that I'm pretty sure is available now called Caregivers. I think that this is an opportunity to build systems for, at least in your local communities. And I think that he would be a good resource for that. And also we have some people in our own community who are first responders and who have been integrating this for their patients. But I think it'd be great to get their input for how they do it for themselves as well. And as far as changing the language from social distancing to physical distancing, we do want people to stay connected. And I was noticing as I was walking around my neighborhood yesterday is that people were, when we passed each other on the path, they would look down, and finally someone looked up and said hi, and I'm thinking, we can use this opportunity to say, hey, howdy, to everybody we see, to make sure that we have a concerted effort to bridge that distance. It's that physical distance. So if we can get a hey, howdy out of everybody, that'd be, or something that you're comfortable with, that would be really great.
That's great. I think that's something we can all agree to do. Just, yell at people from a safe distance, kindly. A fellow ACEs Connection staff member, Gail, messaged me privately and asked me if I would ask you all if you might want to let us know here in the chat if there's anything you're wanting from our site, any resources, or if you're able to find the resources that you need or not. So this is definitely a place where we can take feedback on that. If you have any, please feel free to put that in the chat. Okay. Deb Burke also says Trauma Matters Delaware has discussed putting together a collective group of resources via a shared Google Doc. Okay, any comments on that, Jane?
Anything that you all put together, please share on ACEs Connection, because I'm sure there are other people who would love to get that content. So if you put, we'll figure out a way to put on ACEs Connection someplace for these good ideas. Besides doing a blog post and putting them into the Daily Digest and the Weekly Roundup, but we may create a separate community for that, because we're going to keep needing these good ideas as we go through this.
Yeah, and I know that not every member of our ACEs Connection community knows, many of you do on our regular posters, bloggers, and we love and appreciate you for that. But many of you don't know that you can post on our website. And so I just want you to know that if you are a member of ACEs Connection, you can go to our home website, acesconnection.com, and as long as you're logged in, you can click the post button. It's in the upper right hand corner, and you will be given a couple of different options of different post styles, and we invite you to make a post. So if you have this collection of resources for Delaware, we would love for you to make a post either on our main website or in one of the community sites, which is just a smaller group of people, like, for a community in Delaware. But we invite you to post on our main website anytime. Okay, so Amy says, that might be one way ACEs Connection could help provide an updated inventory of what channels may have specialized topic areas, such as parenting with ACEs, on the current need related to this theme. Might help direct traffic without recreating what's already embedded in the site. Okay, so someone says there are so many resources floating out there, picking a few that would allow us to focus and take things in chunks. Our office is putting together small 3-minute videos to help folks manage things in chunks. Does that make sense? Thank you. Okay, Rebecca says, I'm in an organization that isn't open to hearing any trauma-informed insights, and I'm seeing a desperate need for insight I'd like to share, especially for staff who are on the front line of college student stress. I'd like to hear some non-trauma language that could maybe get a foothold. If I mention trauma, I'm essentially told now's not the time.
That's a really good question and important. And I think that I don't have a resource off the top of my head, but I do know people who are in that space. And so we have a community for higher education. And I think that there are people that we can connect you with in there who may have addressed this issue. So we will, like I say, we're recording all this, so we'll be sure to answer this question and provide you with resources. And if anybody who's on the chat now has resources, please put them on there and we'll make sure that they're included.
All right. Yeah, so there's also a link here for ACEs in Education. So that's another community that you can join for specific information for ACEs in Education. How to have an ACEs Connection branch or group in Montreal. Well, then you talk to me. So Teresa, I'm gonna go ahead and just put my email here, and you can go ahead and email me. I am the one that runs this region, and I'm happy to connect with you about that. Asabula@acesconnection.com. Okay, so let's see. Kia says, I was asking about the info Jane read at the beginning. Could you explain where we'll be able to find it specifically? So I had written, we'll do a blog post with a recording of this, and we'll include resources that we mentioned. And so that's a great question, because that sort of speaks to a bigger thing of, like, if I'm trying to find something on your website, where do I find it? And so I'll just answer this. Our website posts the blogs in chronological order. And so when do we think we might put this one up, Jane?
As soon as I can get to it. So it might be in parts, because I do want to be as responsive as possible, as soon as possible. But this particular quote was actually a tweet by Dr. Aisha Ahmad, and she's at the University of Toronto, and her handle is @Prof. AISHAAHMAD.
We also have it retweeted on our Twitter @ACES Connection. So if you go to our Twitter @ACES Connection, you'll see the tweet.
Okay.
And thank you, Carrie, for putting that up there on our Twitter. But I want to make sure that everyone knows how to find our blog posts. So basically you go to the home page, and it's a chronological order. And if you just scroll down a little bit and you don't see it, you just click, see more blog posts. And so I hope that you're able to find this post there on our homepage when we do post it. So Carrie, staff member here at ACES Connection, just wants you all to know that as Jane is bringing up resources, they are being posted on our Twitter. So if you have any questions about the resources she's mentioned, and you want them right now, they are there. Okay, so from Melissa, okay, so this was in response to what Rebecca had posted. Does toxic stress get any more traction than trauma? So I don't know if you guys have been able to discuss that in here. Jane, any comments about different terms?
So I think it depends on who you talk with. I mean, as sorry, I don't remember the person who was Kia, who was I think who was worried about getting her organization in a college setting to look at this language. You really go for whatever speaks to the people who you're talking with. So if they don't resonate with toxic stress, they can resonate with trauma. They can resonate with difficult experiences that you had in your childhood. There's a lot of different ways to get in, and I think that you just have to figure that out when you're talking with people. Obviously, the person who was trying to get this into her organization in her college setting was meeting resistance. So we want to do everything we can to help figure out, well, what is a different way in? So it depends on your audience completely. There are people who will get it and there are people who won't. Our path has been to provide the science and say, you translate it. And we've had some really interesting translations, if you will, of the science. So we'll pay more attention to that. And I think it's really a good point.
Yeah. So Michael says that he is worried about how the stress and isolation and constant contact will increase domestic violence and child abuse, with professionals and social supports having few options for knowing about problems or helping, looking for ideas or examples and strategies.
That is so important right now, because I was just on a meeting yesterday where someone who's in this field said that one of her clients who has never been physical with her kids is under so much stress that she slapped her kids 3 times and she was horrified. So I think that even people who are able to have developed coping skills for a certain level of stress are probably being stressed even more. So we should address that as a community. I think in parenting with ACEs, I think now we know that people have high ACEs have more challenges, but dollars to donuts right now, people even have 1 or 2 ACEs, or ACEs that aren't on the 10 ACE list are having issues. And so not only are we all in this together as far as this pandemic, but we're all in this together as far as reacting to stress and in times of great stress like this. So I think that we can do more to address that. It's not just the people with the high ACE scores, but it's everybody. You never know what's going to trigger you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, Jody says, we do have a lot of trauma-informed practice with schools and providing them with a lot of resources. First week focus is self-regulation. We also are making it open to the public on our website, sounddiscipline.org. And the Resilience movie will be free online on April 9th. That is good to know.
Thank you, Jody. And Jody's work is fabulous. I highly recommend it.
Great. Thank you so much. Alan says, consider addressing some of the community trauma issues such as racism. Trump is continuing to refer to this as the Chinese virus.
I think this is awful. Don't get me started. I think that we probably need to lift this up and other things that are being said to push back, and probably keep reiterating, you know, this is what's factual and this is what is not. Just by the way, the 1918 Grape Flu Epidemic started in Kansas. So it can start anywhere. You know, there have to be certain conditions, but the idea is to make sure you don't have those conditions. This is not a Chinese flu, this is not a Spanish flu. And by the way, in 1918, Woodrow Wilson named it the Spanish flu because he didn't want people to know it came from the US. So there's some parallel there.
Great.
So thank you, Ellen, for that comment.
Okay, Nicole says that she wants to stay on mute because she's surrounded by noisy kids, and I think a lot of you all can relate to that. I know quite a few of our staff members can as well. I work closely with youth, and I'm really looking for ways to help guide parents during this pandemic and quarantine. How can we help parents prevent this from being a traumatic experience for their children? Oh, that's a good question.
That's a really good point. Is Sissy on?
Let me see. I did see her earlier, but I'm not sure if she's, her video's not on, so I'm not sure if she's right at, I can unmute her and ask. Sissy, are you there?
I am.
Do you want to speak to that one? No? Okay. I don't think she was ready to speak.
Okay. So I would say that we should address this, and we will address this. Thank you for bringing it up, to make this an experience that can be fun. You know, there are some people who are saying, you know, this is a great opportunity for parents and families to be together. I mean, for parents and children to be together in a way that they haven't been able to for, you know, a few decades, really. So the more that we can do to help that, the better. And we'll put more attention on that. One of the things that I think is really important is to not have them listen to the news. I mean, unless they can somehow do something about it, you know, help them create their new normal, and not be scared all the time, and not get the scary news transmitted through the parents all the time either. I know that some people have CNN on all the time in their house, and I think that at this point, maybe small doses would be better, and to focus, since this is going to be for, you know, 2 or 3 months, maybe more, figure out what this new time of being together will be, and we'll do as much as we can to transmit or to distribute the resources that we find on that.
Yeah, and so Sissy did respond in the chat with the regulation practices adults and kids can do are in this community that we have called Practicing Resilience, and the link is there. And so again, just inviting you all to join some new communities that maybe you didn't know existed on our website. So Jody had responded, our language around trauma focuses on resilience, which is what we are looking for. Yeah. Jane says, it would be hugely helpful to have a webinar focus on profound self-care, especially for caregivers and first responders, by spending time in nature daily, listening to music and dancing alone and with family members, doing the Donna Eden Energy Daily Google online video, and using EFT tapping.
I think that's a great idea. We'll put it down. As I said at the beginning, we're planning on doing these kinds of things 3 or 4 days a week. from now on. So we'll keep you posted on that. So thank you for that.
Jane, did you want to say something really quickly? Yeah.
So first of all, I made an error. It should say the Donna Eden daily routine, which is on YouTube. It's really easy to find. And the issue of not being able to use trauma-sensitive, trauma-informed, trauma-responsive language can be circumvented just by simply speaking about self-care, because that's really what you learn when you have a high ACEs score. The more you learn to self-regulate and build resilience is learning to care for yourself in a way that your caregivers couldn't care for you when you were young and needed it. So self-care is really neutral, and very few people would argue with that.
Oh, I just love that. Thank you so much.
Great idea. And I think that it's also important to absolutely focus on self-care and resilience, but to understand why you might lose it or why somebody else might lose it. I think there are a lot of people who say, well, let's just not talk about ACEs. Let's just talk about the resilience piece. But if you don't understand why these things that are working for everybody else aren't working for you, and you have had more stresses in your life, you need to understand that it's going to take you longer, that you're going to need to be paying attention to this longer. I mean, I always thought that, okay, if I learn this, I'm done, and I'm perfect now and I've reached this. But because of my background, I realized that this is a daily self-care that I have to do for the rest of my life. That's stuff that was burned into my brains. My brain, and I have one, my brain was, it's very strong. And so I have to keep, and I didn't get to changing things until fairly late. So this is a daily self-care reminder. And now I love it.
Lucy says, webinars are a great way to self-monitor how much I touch my face.
No kidding.
But if we're all isolated, then you can kind of just touch your face at home, and then wash your hands. So, okay, the resilience link, someone asked and someone posted, so thank you very much. I really appreciate how you all are coming together as a community, just even in this chat space. So thank you so much. Eileen says, I would appreciate strategies targeted to using a trauma-informed approach within organizations to support staff and consumers when there are constant changes in operations based on recommendations that are coming from a variety of sources. Wow. Yeah.
I think when there's that kind of flux, the number one best thing you can do, and if someone else has, if Allison can see people who raise their hand, we want to make this a little, as far as we can, a little more, not just me talking, is if you model behavior, especially when people around you are losing it, then you can help people self-regulate, get back and say, hey, I know you're feeling bad, this is, and I used to do that too, this is how I help myself. But when you're in this time where it's not an organization that is static and you can have programs and start building this in, I think that you doing this for yourself and showing other people and will be a good start for that. If anybody else has any ideas, we'd love to hear them. And if Allison doesn't see anybody, we just put it in the chat.
Yeah. Let's see. So Kate says, many of our first responders are the classic early trauma survivors themselves. But something I'm finding is that some of the behaviors that might be considered maladaptive in routine life are actually really important and useful in these times of crisis.
The connection just slowed down for me. How's it for everybody else?
Yeah, for me, it went out a
There
little
we
bit.
go. Okay. So,
behaviors that might be considered maladaptive for routine life are useful during a time of crisis. Any thoughts on that, Jane?
I'm definitely not expert in this, but as I mentioned earlier, we have a couple of people in our community, and I will, if they aren't on this call, I will definitely ask them so that they can respond to this. But it's a good point, and it's, when you're in a crisis, when you're helping somebody who's been injured, you have to shut down your emotions, but and just help them. But that doesn't bode well if you don't open your emotions up later. I mean, that would be my first response. But I think people who are in this field can have a lot more to say about that.
So I think we'll just do a couple more and then we'll wrap it up, just in the interest of, about that kind of the in care of everyone's attention span. Let's see, Angelica has one that's a little bit longer. So if you're there, I'm just going to try unmuting you. Okay, I was able to. If you want to read yours, Angelica.
Yeah, scrolling up to get to it. Sorry.
Yeah.
I work for Pediatric Association, and we have a learning collaborative that trains pediatricians to screen for ACEs and social determinants of health. So right now our doctors are a little bit overwhelmed because they're on the front lines combating the virus. So we've postponed some of our activities, but in the interim, we are sending out some tip sheets about strengthening families during school closures, some self-care tips for emergency responders, as others have mentioned, and managing children's anxiety in the midst of the virus. And we're also spotlighting a few different local organizations that are providing ACEs and social determinants of health related resources throughout the pandemic. But it'd be really great to hear more about how different organizations are providing resources around ACEs and social determinants of health to specific populations. For example, with the idea of increased domestic violence as people are quarantined, how are domestic violence shelters responding and things like that?
So we need to, someone else had asked about what is being done in the domestic violence arena. And so we'll find some other resources on that have been integrating ACEs science. And the other things that you're doing, we have a ACEs and Pediatrics community on ACEs Connection. So it'd be wonderful if you could post your information there, because I know that the journalist on our staff, Laura Udesky, is actually talking with other pediatric clinics just about this kind of thing. So we can develop some resources there. That would be terrific. Thank you, Angelica.
Okay, so one of our fellow staff members has asked me privately if we would like people to comment on Lori. She's one of our amazing staff writers. Ask the community. So she had asked the community what your community is doing in response. So Elizabeth, would you mind posting that link in the chat for everybody? I think that it is good to ask. So what you all can do is actually just go to this link that Elizabeth will post. It's an ask the community, which is a type of post you can make on our website. And if you are logged in, you can just go ahead and respond as a comment to that post and continue our conversation on there. And she's looking to write a piece about what communities are doing. So thank you all for doing that. Jane, how many more questions? I do want to kind of think about wrapping up.
Right. Why don't we take just a couple more, and then we can wrap up and maybe see if there's a couple of people who have comments so we can get other people's voices in this. Any picture books for young children and elementary students. We have a books community on ACEs Connection that has quite a few books for kids on that deal with transition and change and trauma. So please take a look there. And if anybody in the community has any that they want to recommend, please do that as well, and we'll put them in there.
And so Deb Burke, let me see if I can find you among everyone. If you want to speak to this event that you have posted about, I'm going to try unmuting you. There we go. Deb?
Sure. So originally we were planning a face-to-face event where we brought in speakers for May, which is our Trauma Awareness Month. But now our governor has mandated no large gatherings up at least through mid-May. So Trauma Matters Delaware group was talking about how can we provide programming to the community, recognizing that there could be issues related to, say, internet access or connectivity. And so I was asked to brainstorm ideas for our programming committee to bring to the larger steering group. So I wanted to kind of throw it out here and hear what other people's ideas might be about providing programming to the community. It could be to providers, it could be to actual community members right now with the parameters we currently have.
Thank you, Deb.
Thanks. Is this so? Is this isn't education, right? Or is it just people having access to the internet to work together? Is that the idea?
It's an educational. So we typically do educational programming, either a conference, a speaker, an event where we provide information and knowledge to an audience.
For adults, you're talking about here.
Historically, we've done adults, but we've been debating about, and historically our audiences have typically been social service providers, but we've talked about broadening that focus to the community members who oftentimes don't get reached by programming.
Okay, good. Thank you. This is something that we've also been trying to figure out, and I know that, I just heard this morning that some of the companies that provide internet access are trying to loosen it up so that it's no cost for people. So we'll keep an eye on that. And then I was thinking about figuring out ways to use our network. We have 41,000 people now in our community on ACES Connection, to see if we can figure out how to get people to provide services or help or whatever for people who need things. It can be a barter, it can be a gift, it can be whatever. But I'm gonna look into what we can do on our network to support that, and I'll get back to you on that. Time has gone by so quickly, and I'm sorry we didn't get to everybody, but I'm so grateful for everybody who's on this call, coming in and asking questions and providing ideas, and we'll go through every bit of this and we'll start getting back to you on things that you suggest. But it seems like from this response that you think we all should be doing this, and we'll definitely make this a priority and keep going on it for as long as we need to do this. We have our communities on ACES Connection, and I invite you to go to the communities tab on the homepage and see the variety of interest-based and geographic-based communities that are there, so that you can join them if you're interested. But I think what we're doing now is more of is an adjunct to those things, which is a fast response to needs that people are expressing right now. So we'll keep all that in mind. I wish that I could have heard from every one of you, and I thank you so very much. Please be in touch with me if you have any other questions or want to chat, and we'll keep in touch. So,
and and just again, I put my email address up on there. But if you have something where you're really wanting to contact someone on staff, we do have contact information on our homepage on the right-hand side. So feel free to go to our homepage and reach out to a community facilitator in your region. Dana's contact info is very prominent. She's also available to contact via our website. Just in case you think of something that you didn't get to put in this chat that seems important and relevant to this conversation. And then just to reiterate that if there was a resource mentioned in a conversation, that our staff member Carrie has put it on our Twitter, so @ACES Connection. So if you want to just quickly find that before a blog comes out, you can find that there. A lot of them are links back to our website. As we do have a lot of resources on our website, and I really appreciate the staff members who have, like Gail and Sissy and Elizabeth, who joined us and were able to throw resources up as we were discussing. But like Jane said, thank you all so much. You are this community, and it's just such an honor that you took time out of your day to be here with us. And so moving forward, I guess I do want to plug, we will probably stick with this time. And we are thinking about doing little webinars Tuesday through Friday, starting next week, just so you all know to stay tuned for that. Anything else on that, Jane?
Nope, I think you've covered it. Great working with you. Thank you all again.
Thank you so much, Jane.
Bye. Have a peaceful and safe day.